Well, hello everyone, Texie88 here, and welcome to another review. And this time I bring you Syntax for the Sinclair ZX Spectrum, brought out by Blue Ribbon Software in 1989. Now, I found out about this game when it was reviewed in a magazine back in the day, and the reviewer called it possibly the worst game he had ever played in his entire life, and gave it a score of 19 degrees in Your Sinclair. But I say degrees because they were using a thermometer gauge that went up to 100 degrees instead of percent. So it equates to 19%. It's just they were a bit original at the time and used degrees rather than percent. But I thought I'd actually take a look at it myself and see if it really is as abysmal as all that. And the first thing I noticed about the game is that it uses the Sinclair character set. Now, for a game that came out in 1989, I know the copyright year there says 1988, but from what I can make out, the actual release was in 1989. Oh dear. Sinclair character set in a game that was released in the late 1980s. Yes, indeed. And what's even worse is the only keyboard controls you can use are option 3 on this menu, cursor keys, i.e. 5, 6, 7, 8, which represent left, down, up, right. And presumably 0 being fire, because I believe that was normally what was used as fire whenever cursor key controls were the norm, which tended to be in the earliest games on the Spectrum. But a game that came out in 1989 whose only keyboard controls are cursor key controls, that's pretty bad as well. Oh dear, I really get the feeling this is really not getting off to a good start. So, according to what I've looked at, I got to try and stop Syntax from launching an attack on Earth, and I can only do that by collecting all 10 radio deactivation crystals and dropping them into the Syntax ventilation shafts. Yes. So you have 3 ships remaining and 999 time states. Hit fire to continue. Oh my god. Well, up and down seem to be raising and lowering altitude. Oh, but look at this. It's really slow. And left and right. Collision occurred. No, it didn't. There was a notable gap between me and that ball thing. And yes, I was right. It is indeed 0 to fire. Now, I know that the Spectrum keyboard did actually have the arrows on the 5, 6, 7 and 8 buttons, but that still doesn't make it any easier. But I'm presuming that's one of the... No, it can't be. There are loads of them. I thought that might have been one of the crystals I was supposed to collect. Well, if those aren't the crystals, what are? There's no sound. I mean, in 1989, there were... What? Did I crash into a wall or something? There's definitely no enemy there. Oh god, this is utterly slow. And now I suddenly can't fire. What? Collision occurred? Oh, God alive. Well, maybe that reviewer back in Your Sinclair was onto something. This is really poor. What? I'm finding it really hard to tell what I can fly over and what will kill me if I try. I mean, if there's something you can't fly over, couldn't they have given it a drop shadow or something to make it a bit more obvious? I mean, in something like oh, for 5 minutes. How was I supposed to know I couldn't fly over that? And does the actual differing in height actually have any bearing on gameplay? Oh, what? Now what did I hit? It definitely wasn't one of those enemies. Oh dear. Tell you what, if John Gage is watching this and he's after a contender for a Spectrum shit game time, I think this is a more than worthy contender. This is utterly crud. Oh, for son of a... What's this thing about time states? There's absolutely nothing mentioned about them on the blurb or on the back of the inlay. I couldn't actually find any instructions online, but I looked at spectrumcomputing.co.uk and the closest I could find to instructions was the inlay of the original. Of the original cassette in which the game originally came in. And I pity anyone who actually bloody bought this thing. I mean, I know it was a budget release and only cost $2.99, but even at that low price, you definitely wouldn't want to play this. It's that bad. Oh, God. What? I just seem to be exploding all over the place. Okay, this is going to be the last go. Oh, God. Yeah, I'm right. I'm just blowing up all over the shop. I don't even know what's causing it. I mean, oh, this game is absolutely hideous. The left and right controls were extremely slow to respond. Oh my God. Ugh. I've been trying this for a while and I haven't found anything that even remotely resembles a deactivation crystal. That didn't touch me. There was a gap between me and that enemy. And why are the enemies in this so unimaginative? It's just ball shapes or triangles. Couldn't they have come up with something a bit more interesting than that? Oh, God. Oh, well, that's syntax for the Sinclair ZX Spectrum. A game that is unrelenting in its crappiness. Graphics, monochrome, messy, somewhat indistinct. I'll get back to why I said indistinct here a bit later on. Enemies are unimaginative. It's just simple shapes. Remember, this is a game that came out in 1989. And we had far more interesting graphics way beyond that point in the Spectrum's lifespan. Sound, well, that's an easy one to judge because there isn't any, so not much to say about that. Gameplay, crap, absolute crap. It's so boring, unfair, and abysmally programmed and slow. I mean, you could adjust your height by pressing up and down, but that didn't. I didn't find anything in what I've just experienced in which that actually came into play. It's not clear what you can fly over and what will kill you if you were to even attempt it. I couldn't find any. I couldn't find anything that made sense. There was a point where I was flying over something, and I thought maybe me not seemingly not being able to shoot bullets out of my ship meant that I was approaching something that I couldn't fly over. But there was a point where I was actually flying over something and couldn't shoot, and I didn't blow up, or at the very least not initially. And then there are points where I just seem to be blowing up for no apparent reason. And don't even get me started on that awful hit detection. I mean, I was being killed by enemies that were quite some way away from me. Certainly not close enough to even scrape the paintwork off the ship I was controlling. In fact, that ship is the only reasonably drawn thing in this whole game. Everything else about it is terrible. Oh God, so I could go on for ages saying what's wrong with this game, but it's just hell to play. It's boring to look at. It's slow. It's dull. It's unfair. It's got really bad hit detection. And even if you ultimately found just one of the radio deactivation crystals, the chances are, would you even want to continue on with the gameplay, given how boring everything else and unfair everything else is? My guess is no. So I'm actually going to give Syntax on the ZX Spectrum 1 out of 10. I wouldn't have even given that a score based on what came out in the early stages of the Spectrum's life. I mean, even the woeful Bridgerton home runner on the Amstrad CPC were more playable than this. So no, I can't recommend this game at all, and I am really not surprised that Your Sinclair reviewer found the game so utterly ghastly back in that review I read. So, John Gage, if you're watching this and you're after something else to add to the Spectrum part of shit game time, I think I've found a winner for you here. Syntax for the ZX Spectrum by Blue Ribbon Software. It may have been a budget release, but for that same $2.99, you could get something like Renegade or possibly even Iridium. Or maybe even Target Renegade. I don't know. I don't know when that actually came out on budget. But whatever, you could for that same $2.99 that was being charged for Syntax, according to what I've looked up, you could get. There were plenty of other budget titles that are far more fun and far more playable and far fairer than this pile of dross. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this review. I certainly experienced one of the worst games on the Spectrum in Syntax. Texie88 out.